Hey, how's everybody doing? Thanks for joining us for our inaugural All Our Yesterdays reboot. We have an incredible show for you tonight, for today, whenever it is you're watching this thing. You know what I mean? But first, let's introduce some people. Kevin, our producer, who's running the show, pushing buttons, checking out comments, and all that good stuff. We got Chris Byrne along for the ride today. And our guest today is none other than Justin Lloyd, who's written a book called The Importance of Being Earnest and is now currently working on a documentary. So without further ado, Justin, tell us what's going on, who you're related to, what is going on, and how this all thing started.
Well, let's see. I'm related to Jim Varney. That's the youngest brother of my mother, Sandra. She had two older sisters, and that's her younger brother. It really, for me, all started in 2008 when I decided that I was going to write a book about Jim. I figured, nobody else had at the time, and I didn't think anybody was going to. I was online quite a bit looking at various things like YouTube and different websites, and I could see that there's a lot of interest about him, and that some information out there wasn't always the best, the most accurate. And I knew a lot about him, and I knew a lot of people that knew a lot about him. And so I thought, well, maybe I'm just the person who could maybe put something together, like a book perhaps, and really put something substantial together that would really please all his fans. And that's when I went on this like almost 6 year, I call it an adventure of writing a book. And so that came out back in 2013. And then it's been a few years now, through the book and just me being online all the time, trying to promote it and exchanging, messages with fans. I came across the Ernest Goes to Chat. Ernest Goes to podcast, and that's Aaron Hall and David Bogano. And I was on that podcast into its like first or second year at some point. And so David decided that he wanted to do a documentary and reached out to me, wanted to base it on my book, and I was interested in that. I probably would have wanted to do a documentary from the beginning. I'm really a movie person, not even a book person. So we also got in touch with Daniel Butler from the Ernest Preservation Society guys, Dustin Wyckoff, Derek Hoover, and those guys. And they had reached out to him, and we got in touch with Daniel through him. And so now it's Daniel, myself, David Bogano, and some other people here that we're taking on this documentary, which started a couple of years ago, but because of the last couple of years, we've had delays with COVID. But recently, we just started shooting just last month, and so that's very exciting to finally get rolling on the recording of the interviews. So that's kind of the long and short of it for the moment.
So what are some of your actual memories of growing up with Jim?
I didn't get to see him a lot. He, for really the most part of my life, my childhood, he lived in Tennessee, just north of Nashville in White House. And so we would see him around the holidays, though, especially Christmas. My mom's family always celebrated Christmas on Christmas Eve, and my dad's on Christmas morning. So Christmas Eve, my mom's family would get together at either our house, my grandmother's house, or my aunt's house. And and he was usually there. And he was just kind of the life of the party. I mean, as soon as he walked in, it was just, all Jim, and he was just like electric, And he was just he would do imitations. He would break out knives and watches that he bought. And he was teaching the history of Christmas. I mean, he was just like this one man show. He just went on and on. And so we really didn't see him as Ernest so much. I mean, he wasn't like that Ernest character, when he was not doing Ernest. So But he was really good to us, and really fun to be around. Just the kind of the life of the party. So.
Chris, you got a question? I don't want to run the show. I just don't want to run the whole.
So, what's your earliest memory of Jim growing up?
Probably, really, I don't know. I'm trying to think because, man, it goes back really far. So when I was really young, I mean, in the 70s, he was out in California. And so I don't even know really if I was even aware of him hardly until I was probably close to 8 years old when he moved back to Kentucky. I don't think I really saw much of him at all until I was about 8. If I did, I was maybe too young to even remember.
Yeah.
So it was really in the early 80s, he moved back to Kentucky, and he moved down to Tennessee in 82, probably like somewhere in the early 80s. And he was just, I don't really know. I mean, he's just really different. I know being in Lexington, the Lexington market had convenient commercials. And so we were lucky there to have, because, the commercials, Ernest commercials really started out in Nashville. And so a year into it or so, he got convenient in Lexington. So we got to see him in Lexington. So that was really neat to see commercials on TV.
Yeah.
And so that was really neat. Like, okay, this is my uncle and the commercials, and that's great. But I always talk about, the Ernest Family album came out that next year in 84. And that was really kind of like my real introduction to really what kind of actor he was and all the things he could do. And it really kind of blew me away. And it's always probably been my favorite because of that from, even today. So that was really probably my early introduction to him.
Did you ever go to school and be like, "Hey, this is my uncle," and, just to kind of throw a little clout around?
I can't remember if I ever did. I know it was funny. I came across a picture the other day that somebody had on a convenient T-shirt that had his face, and it had like the vest on the T-shirt, on the side with his face, and I'm like, that's a T-shirt I used to have, and I was probably 11 or so. I wish I still had that now, but I remember wearing that to school. But I don't really remember how talking to other kids about it and stuff. Probably not until I was older, maybe a little bit older when he was in the movies. So
I found a picture of me probably from the late 80s, and I'm wearing a white shirt, and there's like, I think it's more like a pink color, but it says, "Hey Vern," and it's Ernest on it or whatever. And I found this picture, and I've got this big beard, and I'm wearing like those aviator sunglasses that have the little blinders on the side, and I'm like, or whatever, and I'm like, "Where's this shirt?" And I'm like, "No, did I really get rid of this thing? Like, no way," or whatever. So the things you outgrow, and you're like, I'm not going to keep this. It doesn't fit me anymore. But you don't think that it could be something that no one else will ever have.
They would ever want again. Yeah.
Yeah.
I found it's funny, like on this subject, I found an old cassette tape because I had the boombox and record all kinds of stuff on the cassette tapes, and I remember playing when the family album was on TV. I think we got the tape afterwards, and I recorded part of the Billy Boogie World, the skit there with the music, onto a cassette tape. And I went back and I was able to find the cassette tape that's got the music on it, or recorded back in 84 or something. So
that's cool.
Just holding it up to the TV.
Cool. Yeah, I used to record like BJ and the Bear and the Dukes of Hazzard with a tape deck so I could listen to it later or whatever. So it's pretty funny.
Usually it was just the radio stuff, like the top 40 stuff. But yeah, every once in a while I'll record stuff off TV. So.
But you brought up an interesting point a little bit ago where you said he wasn't Ernest to us. And that's the thing that I think with any celebrity, whether it's, Jim Varney, Robin Williams, Elvis Presley, or whoever, you attach yourself to Elvis, the entertainer, or Ernest P. Worrell or Robin Williams, but there's another side to that person that only you as a family member get to see. So for us, it's like, Jim Varney is either, Ernest or Jed Clampett or the voice of Slinky Dog or these other incredible things. And a lot of people do not realize, and I know you do, that his range was so incredible. Like I've seen this thing where he does Shakespeare like on YouTube or whatever. But what you said, I used a little quote from Amazon or whatever, but he got pigeonholed. Like he's this earnest guy that's like, ooh, you know, and it's like he can't do anything else, but he could. And, you know, same thing with a bunch of other actors. They got stuck in this place, but they're like, dude, I'm an actor. And they're like, yeah, but you were on the Waltons, so no one's going to take you seriously in anything else or whatever. And that's a shame because he was so freaking talented that he could have done so much more. And obviously, unfortunately, his life was cut way too short. He would still be making us laugh today. And it's a shame. But yeah, I mean, to you, who was Jim Varney? Because to us, or at least to me, you know, he's Ernest. But to you, he was somebody completely different. So how does Ernest or Slinky Dog compare to the real Jim Varney to you?
I mean, that's just different parts of who he was. I mean, he just was so talented. I mean, I feel like he's one of those people that just sucked out of life everything that was there. I mean, he was so interested in so many things, you know, history, and he would, you know, travel to England and, you know, research the Varney history. He loved, you know, knives and watches, guns. He loved to give them as gifts and give you lessons on them, and tell you what their historic significance was. He just did a lot of studying in his spare time, and with jewelry and all these things. He loved old things, and he loved the history behind them, and like the history of guns and throughout society, and how civilizations rose and fell through the you know, weaponry and so forth. So yeah, he just loved life, and I don't know if, you know, he was not into computers much, but at some point I think he would have really gotten onto the internet and really maybe never gotten off. I mean, he would have he would have loved to just researching, you know, 24 hours probably online.
Having an encyclopedia just like with a little on a phone, basically, like
right, because now you don't, you know, back in, you know, you had to know a lot about computers, right? But now it's your phone. You just click something, search. It's like, you know.
Whether or not it's true is another story. But
right.
Yeah.
I was doing that earlier, just talking into my phone. I'm like, I don't know how to pose the question, but I know what I want to ask, because the internet will take you down rabbit holes you probably don't want to go down. So.
But it would have been interesting. I mean, it would have been cool even to see if he like dabbled in social media, or, you know, even podcasting. Like there's a lot of people that get into it. So that would have been interesting to hear. Even like maybe that would have been something that could have got him out of the pigeonhole, you know, like doing a podcast about history or something. That would have been cool.
And I think he was slowly getting out of being pigeonholed, you know, with you know, the Billy Bob Thornton movie he was in, Daddy and Them, and just how his facial features were changing, and he was having some facial hair and that kind of thing. I think he was getting out of that. I think, and he was starting to distance himself from Ernest. I think at some point, I mean, if he had still been alive, I think he would have probably distanced himself and then gone on to do other things, and maybe then come back and done some kind of Ernest thing later, perhaps some kind of. But yeah, it's hard to say, because, you know, him and Billy Bob Thornton were really good friends, and I remember him talking about the movie Sling Blade. And, you know, I talked about this in my book. This was in 1993 or so. And of course, Billy Bob Thornton wasn't a name then. And so he was like, yeah, I've got this buddy named Billy Bob. He's written this thing called Sling Blade, and it's really good. I mean, you're like, all of that just sounds completely. And I just remember sitting there going, yeah, I mean.
Billy Bob, sure. Yep.
Yeah, Billy Bob. Sling Blade, you're just like, okay. And then it wasn't until I saw it a couple of years later, and I'm like, I just loved it. I'm like, oh, okay, this is what he was talking about. Yeah, it is. It's really good. But and I don't know. I don't know why he wasn't in that. And I'm thinking, gosh, that would have really been huge. But I think it was other Ernest types of things, because I'm sure that Billy Bob probably would have cast him in that. They had been friends for years before that. And of course, he put him into Daddy and Them. So I think it was some kind of Ernest.
Yeah, probably was Hollywood, like a Hollywood thing where like you want a producer, he's not going to be in the movie. Like it's unfortunate, but I hear that stuff all the time.
Yeah. And so, but I think about that when you're like, man, that would have really been something for him.
That would have totally changed the stigma behind
probably depending on I don't know what role he would have had in that, but yeah,
either way it would show even more range,
exactly.
Now with my ADHD, I forgot the name of this, but obviously you obviously remember, but didn't he film some movie that is yet to see the light of day that was some like weird horror movie thing or something that was either unfinished or finished but it's not available somewhere?
It was. I mean, it was. I think you're talking about Blood, Friends, and Money.
Yes.
And I mean, I think that just. I think it was just a small budget movie, and I'm not sure. It wasn't like a wide release or anything. And so I don't know.
It is out though.
I'm sorry.
It is out.
No, I don't know I don't know what the story is behind that. Exactly why it was never like released on DVD or anything. I think there was recently somebody was able to get a copy of it.
I want to see it now.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like it got made and it's
that's unfortunate too. That happens a lot. That happens a lot. So
I think we've all been involved in a few things that have been made that never see the light of day. So.
Yeah. Now you say Jim liked to give gifts and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What is your most treasured thing that he gave to you that you just like, oh my God, this is from my Uncle Jim?
Any knives or guns? He said
I was like,
I'm like, I want to know about the guns.
I got Christmas presents. Usually they were just cards or something. He would always give us like cash. I think because for him, he would come into town, didn't have a lot of time. He was like visiting friends and so forth too when he came in. So he didn't really have a lot of time to go buy a bunch of presents. So I would usually get like $100, which for a kid in like the 1980s, that was a lot of money. And he used like a funny message. Like I think one of them, he said, spend. I'm like 15 at the time. This is like, he said, spend every dime on whiskey and rubbers or something like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I've still got that, so that's funny to have.
Oh, that's awesome. You still have the card? Not the $100.
It was on
the $100 is gone.
The little money holder thing. So yeah.
That's pretty great. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Yeah. He's like, go buy guns and knives.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Money well spent.
Yeah, for real.
So some of you might, I know Justin knows this, but you guys might not, but maybe you do. But Jim owned a DeLorean, which has now been sold to a super fan. Can you tell us anything about how that happened, Justin?
I don't really know. That's Maureen Edwards. She's part of our Ernest crew now on the documentary, and I think she just saw where it was on an online auction, and her and her husband talked it over and decided that they really wanted it. So and so it was neat because she came and picked it up here in Lexington. And so I got to see it and take pictures with it. I hadn't seen it in many years, so it was cool to see it.
How come you didn't get it, Justin?
Yeah, right.
I wish I had originally. It's funny. I never learned to drive a stick either. So, but I guess
shame.
So when he had it, did he take you for rides in it and stuff?
He did. He took me on one in particular, and I wrote about that in the book. It was pretty funny because he was at our house and just took us. I think he had to go get cigarettes or something, and he drove up to the gas station, and he's blaring this classical music the whole time in the car. I don't remember what it was. It might have been like Vivaldi or something. And so we get up there, and I think if I remember, he raised both doors when the music's still blaring, and he's pulled up to the gas pump. And like, I don't remember if he was pumping gas or he just pulled in there to get to, I can't remember, but you know, everybody's staring at, I mean, it's got the music, it's a DeLorean. And I think some people even recognize that it was him. A lot of people, I'm kind of surprised that people ever recognized him in public because he looked a lot different. He really looked a lot different. But so that was pretty memorable. That was probably the only time I was actually in it, so that I recall. So that was pretty funny.
That's pretty awesome. I would be at school the next day, just being like, "You won't believe what just happened. This is great." All
and
I
bet when he ran into the store to get cigarettes, he was back in no time.
Oh,
I wish I had a cricket sound effect.
I may be able to help you out with that next time around.
Oh God! But what? Obviously, now that he's gone, do you ever watch a movie that's out today or after his passing and go, "Oh, this would have been a perfect role for him"? And if so, do you have some of those in your mind right now that you think, "Wow, Jim would have been perfect in this"?
Oh gosh, I'm trying to think.
Besides the Sling Blade thing that, like you say, you should have been a part of because they were there.
You know, I really was become a huge fan of Breaking Bad. And of course, Bryan Cranston is just awesome, you know, in it as Walter White. But that would have been something interesting. It was funny about that show. I was getting into that. I wasn't into that originally, but a few years into it, I started watching it and really got hooked. And I come to find out that Vince Gilligan, you know, the writer and director of that, had written a screenplay for the movie he was in. What is it now? The one with the Pyrotechnic brothers. The name escapes me now. I knew I'd forget it. But that Jim was in.
The ninja thing?
No, it was the Dennis Quaid, Deborah Winger, the one where they were the brothers that have kinetic powers. I'll think of it in a second.
RW's like Lost. It's a movie
I see the cover, but I'm like,
So I was like, my uncle was in something that Vince Gilligan, you know, it was like his first screenplay, you know, and I was like, wow, there was a connection there. That was awesome. Me like loving Breaking Bad, I was like, man, that's awesome. There's a connection to that. And but yeah, that would have been awesome, you know, something like that for sure. But I don't know.
Even if he was like Saul Goodman in that, that'd be. I could see him as like a, you know, I could
see him as a Saul.
Oh yeah, totally.
Type of character for sure.
Walder Napalm, that's the name of it. Walder Napalm.
I was trying to look it up.
Yeah.
I knew it came to me.
It's funny because before Breaking Bad, like I've been collecting autographs for like 30 years now or whatever. Back 25 years ago, I would just go online and type official website and like it would just find me someone's official website. And so Bryan Cranston wasn't even, I don't even think he was Malcolm in the Middle yet. And I think he was on an episode of Seinfeld and had done some other thing. Yeah. So I was like, hey, love your work, would love your autograph or whatever, right? So I get Bryan Cranston's autograph and I throw it in my autograph book and forget about it. And so one day I'm going through my autograph book to look for something and I go, is that Bryan Cranston? How did I even get this or whatever, right? And now he's like Bryan Cranston. So like I got his autograph before he was on Breaking Bad and famous or whatever. So I was like, wow, that's pretty wild. But yeah, I didn't want to watch a show about people making crystal meth. I'm like,
it's a
great
no
interest.
No,
but I'm saying originally, I'm like, I don't want to watch a show about someone making drugs. That's stupid.
Teaches you how to make money.
Yeah. So
not a responsible way.
Then later on, I'm like, I'll give it a shot. And I watched the first episode and there's a freaking Winnebago driving down the thing with clothes flying off and two dead bodies. And I go, okay, I need to know what's going on here. So like, yeah, it was a great show.
I think it was the premise of him dying that I knew he was dying, and you're thinking, I was like, that premise doesn't seem like, how is it going to last? He's dying. And so that's why it was a year or two before I got into it. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
and
waited
then once
until
you
it was
do,
over
you're like,
for
wow.
years. It was over for a good handful of years before I even checked it out. I was like, I don't know what all the hype's about. And I'm like, oh,
Right, yeah.
that's what the hype's about.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
cool.
get in about
Yeah.
season 3, and then I
Yeah.
was all in because I like a couple seasons behind me because a long weekend. You're like, okay, it's snowing here. I can binge
Yeah.
some stuff, and I'm like, all right, I'm all in on this. And then Better Call Saul came out, and I was like, okay,
Yeah,
stay
you
in the same universe.
You start watching Breaking Bad, and you're like, what time is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can do one more episode.
Well, they're only 56 minutes. We can do
That would have
this.
been. I mean, that would have been something cool too. Like with the way that TV and stuff is now, where there's just so much out there. It would have been cool to see him do some series stuff. Like,
Yeah.
that would have been awesome. I don't know. I'm just thinking. Is all.
No, I just again, it stinks. Like again, to be on the Waltons or Little House on the Prairie, or what have you, and go, oh, you were that little girl in Little House on the Prairie, or you were that Ernest character. Like you're an actor. You tried out for this Ernest role, or you made all those commercials, which was like 30,000 commercials, however many it was, and Brian. John Cherry, Brian Cherry, that's the dude from Dukes of Hazzard. John saw something in that commercial character that said, we have something here. And yeah, it made him a star, but then it made him be associated with Ernest. But I love his, Slinky Dog, and, again, ADHD's kicking in again. All the other stuff that he's done. Like, it's like, yeah, it's like, I had something, it's gone. See ya, butterfly, squirrel.
Yeah.
But yeah, Beverly Hillbillies and everything else. And it's just a shame that he couldn't shed that and, do some other stuff, which I think he was probably going to do.
And, he did. I mean, part of it, was a choice. He did keep making the Ernest movies. And, you can look at it and say, hey, but he also needed to keep working and, I mean, all that too. So that it's easy to sit back and critique and say, well, you should have done this and that. And it's hard, you still got to make money and keep your name out there and all that. So it's tough for an actor. I mean, it really is.
Yeah.
And it's more like, again, it's more of a Hollywood thing. It's more of like, okay, like, yeah, you can do it, but is someone going to give you the chance to do it? Like, you're a huge character that everyone loves, but it's like, give me the chance to be someone you hate, maybe. Like,
yeah.
Like, it's easy to be a Monday morning quarterback and say, should have done this.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It would have been cool to see this, but there's other things behind all of it. Like that, I'm all about horror movies. Like as RW knows, I'm all about horror movies. And like, there's so many actors that are really, really good, but they're stuck in horror movies because that's what they're known for. And like every once in a while, you'll see someone pop up in a Lifetime movie, and that's about it. Other than that, it's like, but they can act their butt off, and it's like, someone just give them another chance, like be in a rom-com, whatever. But it's that's not going to happen, unfortunately, because Hollywood is Hollywood.
But I also think Jim loved kids and knew that kids identified with Ernest, so he probably
character,
So he was like, I gotta do this for the kids to be a positive influence on the kids and be there for them or whatever. And I know, at least according to the internet, that even when he was sick, he was visiting kids in the hospital and stuff. If that is, true stuff that I saw on the internet. Or
and I know Diedrich Bader from Beverly Hillbillies talked about when he was out there filming. Of course, it's way before he was sick, but he on his days off when he was out there filming in Los Angeles, he was visiting hospitals. I guess he had taken some of his Ernest costume with him out there and would go to the hospitals dressed as Ernest. And
I heard that too.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So
So I mean, you gotta commend him for that. Again, I wasn't saying why didn't he do something else. It's just shame that he didn't get a chance to do some other stuff as well as the Ernest movies. Because
I remember when in the 80s we were like, you should be on Saturday Night Live. Like he could just go do that, right?
Oh
like,
yeah.
Whatever.
When you make a call, yep.
But I mean, I thought, gosh, he would have been so great on that with all the sketches and stuff they did. He could have done,
Now, how old were you when he hit? Like when he was like local commercials and stuff like that. But how like were you very young when he finally hit big?
No, I would say the commercials, he really started hitting the national like 84, 85. That's when, you know, you would see the national news, you know, like Van Rather and Tom Brokaw on NBC, CBS, Good Morning America. In 84 and 85, you know, that phenomenon was really getting picked up by the national news. And so, and then it wasn't until, it was in 85, the Indianapolis 500, they'd have this festival, you know, leading up to it, this parade. And he was asked by business up there he was advertising for to be in the parade, to represent them in the parade and everything. And so he's he's in a car going around, and you know that year was the World of Disney, and Mickey Mouse is the Grand Marshal, and he's like getting more applause than Mickey Mouse. And so and in the audience was Michael Eisner, who was the head of Disney at the time, and Jeffrey Katzenberg. And so they were like, you know, who's this guy? They had no idea. It just really took them by surprise, because in really being out in California, that's one of the places, few really at the time, that really didn't have anything earnest. Although by that point he had almost saturated the entire country market by market, you know, without doing a national spot. But that's really then when they, you know, got together with John Cherry and everything to work out a movie deal. You know, that's how the movies got started, was that appearance at that parade there. And so when that first movie came out in 87, I was almost 15 at that time. So I was like 14, 15, you know, mid 80s, and going to the movies. So I was a little older at that time. So that's why the movies for me, like, I see them more, geared to younger kids. The movies I like, but were never, I mean, at the time I was watching, you know, Beverly Hills Cop and Fletch and those
kind of Fletch.
Classics.
Yeah, probably more adult than I should have been watching at that time. But I was, you know, more, you know, adult type of comedies. And so, but I enjoyed them. And I think I've really grown up being really probably more a fan of the commercials than anything. But yeah, I do think definitely the first 4 films were, you know, the best and really well made. And I understand how they connect. I mean, how he really can draw you in, you know, with his, to the camera, the kids, how they, like, almost like Mr. Rogers. I mean, he really connected, and you can see that. It took me a while to kind of recognize how he was able to do that, even knowing he was a good actor, but how he, you know, he could really come across like that to a kid. It's really something.
Yeah. I mean, it's something where, like, I'm a little bit older than my wife by 8 years, and it's like something that every year around Christmas time, Ernest comes up in conversation. Like, or, you know, whatever. It comes up all the time. So it's like, even though we're, you know, I'm 8 years older than she is, it's like, it was a part of my youth and a part of hers. And she was way younger, you know, and it's awesome. Like, I can remember walking around stores and seeing like the Ernest, like, doll with a pull string. And I'm like, that's just crazy. Like, I can't imagine what you would think walking through. You're like, there's a doll of my uncle. Like
yeah.
I don't know. That's all. I mean, I can't even imagine, but I don't know. It made you who you are, I guess, in some ways, right? You wrote a book.
I mean, it's surreal, I guess. I mean, I don't remember what I thought about that. I remember we bought a bunch of them at the time, and yeah, that was pretty neat. But yeah, I think it was just kind of crazy, because, you know, here I would go, you know, we would have Christmas vacation, and my uncle would come and see me, this like major kind of celebrity. And I'd go back to school, and it was kind of, you made your head spin that, you know, he came to your house and you're hanging out with him and giving you presents.
Spend time with you,
yeah. It was kind of nuts.
Now, are there a lot of siblings, or did Jim have a lot of nieces and nephews that he had to bounce around to, or was he able to pretty much just focus and spoil you, Justin?
No, I have a younger sister, and then there's the oldest sister. She sadly passed in '86. But she, you know, I was almost 13 when she passed. So I remember her quite well, and she was around, you know, those early Christmases. And then the second oldest sister, Jake, who's still here, and then Janice Ann, we call her Jake. I know that's a common name for a female. And then my mother, Sandra, it was the third oldest, and then he was 5 years younger than her. So, you know, I think they had 3 girls, and then for 5 years, and they have a son. So there was 10 years between him and Joe Gale, the oldest. So she was almost really like a mother. I mean, they were all kind of mothers to him, but she was quite a bit older. But so yeah, there's a few nieces and another nephew. So yeah, I always joke about that because I kind of like, I'm Jim Varney's nephew, but there is another nephew. So.
Now, did any of the other siblings get the acting bug or the talents that Jim had, or?
My sister and Andrea, and then my cousin Shannon, they kind of dabbled in some acting, and I think at some point that Shannon moved to New York with some dreams of becoming an actor, but yeah, nothing really happened there. But yeah, I think for having an uncle like that, yeah, we all kind of thought about those kinds of things. And,
sure, why not?
Yeah.
Maybe it's hereditary. Let's give it a shot.
Right.
My first introduction to Jim was, of course, seeing the commercials, even up here in New England before the movies and everything came out.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if you know this or not, but when he went to audition for that, was Ernest his idea for the character, or did they kind of give him an idea and he kind of built it around that? Do you happen to know?
The idea for Ernest?
Yeah. Was
Yeah,
it a unique one of his that he was working on before?
It really came about because of who was wanting the commercial. It was Beach Bend Raceway Park. It's in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and they had just been purchased by country music singer Ronnie Millsap, and they were really wanting to get a campaign, to get their business going, and they were having to compete, of course, with like Opryland, and in Nashville being pretty close there, and of course they would need a lot of money to do that. So they talk about, John Cherry went to the park, and somebody that worked there at the time, Tom Farrell, worked with them, and they could see, like, we can't shoot the park as it is. We're going to have a spokesman, and he can't be at the park. And so they started shooting these commercials at John Cherry's home, and using this character Ernest, and I think it was just something that this kind of annoying kind of neighbor. And I think once they got Jim included, they all just kind of came up with it together, and the outfit kind of evolved. At first, I think it was just like jeans and a t-shirt, or just a little button-down shirt and a cap, and then you got later was the blue the vest, and then like a white or gray shirt, and then it was a khaki cap. So it's kind of evolved there in a couple of years. But with Beach Bend, though, I think they maybe only ran about 4 half dozen commercials, and the park, when it went out of business, it's in business now, but at that time it went out of business, and so they really shelved the character for probably at least a year, thinking that, well, that was for Beach Bend, that probably wouldn't work anywhere else. They didn't know, and so it was Purity that came along, that had worked with Carden and Cherry before, and with Jim, because in the early 70s he had that character Sergeant Glory, and so that mainly did Purity commercials from like 72 to 76 there in the Nashville area. So Purity was familiar with Jim, and so they were looking for ideas to do some more milk commercials, and they were like, well, hey, there's this Ernest character we used for Beach Bend, and Purity was interested, and I think knowing Jim and everything, and so that's really how it started. I mean, for the Ernest character was really Purity, and really shortly about during that time, almost the exact same time, there was Pine State Dairies in North Carolina. So both those businesses, and I think somehow I don't know how it worked, but I think Pine State may have actually had commercials right before Purity there in 82. So, but those two were the first dairies, and then that's how it started with the dairies, and then it went on from there. I think they soon got up to like a dozen dairies or so, and then you got the gas and all that. So that's in a nutshell how like Ernest really was born. And you're like, well, the first was in 80, but officially it really kind of started happening in 81, 82, there about a year later. So
I got some Googling to do. I want to try to find some of these old commercials.
Yeah, right. It's always interesting how you hear these characters evolve throughout
Yeah.
the years. So.
And the know what I mean, it kind of evolved, it's all that truncated phrase together. Like, they kind of played around with that. And then I think in like probably in 83 or so, did they kind of make it what it is now, the KNOWHUTIMEAN. That because it wouldn't have the K at the beginning, right? So they played around. So if you see certain advertisements that don't have the note, they have the know what I mean, and it doesn't have the K in the middle, or the words aren't all truncated together. I mean, that means it was like 82, maybe 83 before it was kind of officially made so those are kind of rare things because I've got like a Pine State ad and it's got like, I think know what I mean. And so it's neat to have it where it's not that. And they trademark it too after they.
Yeah, I was going to say it was pre-trademark. Yeah. You saw those.
Yeah, this one's 84.
Okay,
I don't know
so
if
so that's kind of official, right?
Yeah, but when I write it, I always write what I mean when I write it because I never know which way to write it that way. So I just spell it out the way it is, and people are like, "That's not right." I'm like, "Okay." So
they're like, "Whatever, I'm not him."
Exactly. Yeah. No one will ever be.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the first times I met you, RW, one of your many characters that day was Ernest.
Well, it's funny, and I don't want to turn this on to me, but I'll tell the story real quick. But I was at a con in 2014, and I was Murdoch from the A-Team, and my A-Team brothers had to leave, so they left at like 2:00, and the con still had another 3 hours. So I had all this stuff in my suitcase to do Ernest, and I'm like, I guess I'll go try it out. So I put this on, I went into the lobby, and somebody literally went, "Oh my God," and they freaked out, and I'm looking around trying to figure out what the "oh my God" was about. And it was because I was dressed as Ernest. And again, I've been cosplaying for 5-6 years now. I've been acting for like 35, but nothing hits people's heart more than when I wear Ernest in any other outfit. So if 100 people are in a room, 50 of them will say, your Ernest is my favorite. And then the other 50 are like, I like your Roscoe. I like your Shaggy. I like your this.
But they all know who Ernest is, though.
Yeah. And people like, I went to a mall once dressed as this to get my picture with Santa Claus because I thought it'd be funny because Ernest Saves Christmas.
That's very funny.
And so I went into the FI and asked if, they had Ernest Saves Christmas in there. And the lady's like, "Oh my God, you're him." And I go, "No, I'm not him. I'm just pretending to be him because I wanted to get my picture taken with Santa Claus. He unfortunately passed away." And the girl was shaking. And I go, I need to borrow this movie because Santa Claus and his helper out there have no idea who Ernest is. And she goes, "Are you kidding me? Does nobody know what the?" And so she's like, "I'm coming with you." So she grabs her Ernest Saves Christmas movie from FI. It goes out to the Santa Claus and goes, "How do you not know who this guy is? Seriously, Ernest Saves Christmas? What are you, living in a cave?" And she like yelling at Santa Claus and stuff. And it was just the funniest thing that she was that passionate about Ernest. And she wanted to like accost Santa Claus because he didn't know who I was supposed to be or whatever. But that's the reaction I get when I dress like this at a con. People just like go berserk. They're like, he was my childhood hero. Can I get a picture with you? So in that, I must be doing him justice if people, want a picture or whatever. So, I love the guy, not obviously as much as you because he was your uncle. But that's just why I had you on the show, so we could bring him back into the public to say, he made a bunch of movies while he was here. People, go see them. He did, he's got the wacky adventures with some of the, I think there's the early commercials and stuff might be on here. The family album, like all that stuff. Like, go check it out. Maybe the commercials aren't on here. They might be. I can't remember. I have ADHD, but I know there's some on. I thought there was some on there, I believe. But let's never forget Jim Varney. That's, this is why you're here, and this is why you wrote the book. And I know we only have 15 minutes left. So how is the documentary coming along? When do you see it being done? And when are you interviewing me?
Wow.
No, I was kidding. Yeah. But yeah.
We're still putting the interview list together. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's been going well. We had a very productive like 5 or 6 days down in the Nashville area. We went to the Ernest Day. I don't know how familiar you are with that. That started there at Montgomery Bell State Park about 5 years ago. And, it's the site of where they had Ernest Goes to Camp. So that was nice to go to that. And but that way we had a bunch of people at one place where we could interview. So that helped. And then we just went to Nashville from there and a few places around there to interview various people. So we interviewed I'd say at Ernest Day with at least a dozen people, and then after that, about 6 that were involved with Ernest, and one of those being Coke Sam's, a writer director, long time associated with Ernest, and another one, Jim May, who was basically the Vern character, the main cameraman in all the commercials. So that was great to interview them. So it's very exciting to get some of these stories on film. And so I think we're still a few months away probably from doing another set of interviews. I think we may be hitting the Lexington area next. But I'd say we're still probably at least a year or two away.
Yeah.
We did have the delay with COVID. And so, but yeah, we're just really excited about what we've got so far. I mean, we've also been in the meantime, just accumulating lots of stuff there that we were able to get from John Cherry's estate. I know you're probably aware that he passed away.
Yeah.
Sadly, we had gotten already received stuff through him for use in the last couple of years, and then we've since received some more. So I've done a ton of scanning. Of all kinds of pictures, and we've got videos, we've got old commercials. I accumulated quite a bit of stuff myself through the years as I researched for the book, but of course you can't put video in a book exactly. So I had a lot of stuff myself that I was like, at some point I'd like to participate in a documentary because I've got a lot of stuff here that I would like to see possibly contributing to that. So
now, how long do you see this documentary? An hour and a half, or do you have a timeline? Or
that's another thing that, I think we have enough
series, like break it up into like 5 parts.
Yes, a couple different limited series.
That'd be awesome.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that would probably be something I would like to see, but I mean, I don't know, but I think we're gonna have lots of material. I think it could be definitely something in certain parts. So hopefully that's of interest to a lot of people. I know for big fans like you all it is, but I don't know for others. It's like, well, do I want to see 6 hours of this or 2? But
I'm in for 6 hours.
Dude, if we can sit through 6 hours of Ted Bundy, we can sit through 6 hours of Jim Varney.
6 hours? It seemed a lot longer.
If a documentary is like done well, I have zero problem sitting through every second of it. I watched this documentary about like quilting squares painted on the side of barns, and it was amazing. I'm a guy who likes to just watch people get murdered on film. Well, not for real. You know what I mean? And it's like, and I'm sitting there being like, this is fantastic. There's quilting squares all over the country. This is crazy. Like, it's just done really well. But
the series is over and you want more of it.
Exactly. But what we did learn though is that RW's gonna have to take a road trip next time there's a Ernest Day.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you plan on talking to Gaylord Sartain? I mean, he's still around, I believe, isn't he?
He is.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of his. Huge fan. And I know he's in Oklahoma.
Oh, that's where he is now?
Yeah. I think that's where he's been for a while. Yeah.
In '94, I filmed a movie. It was back in my extra days, but it was called The Spitfire Grill, and he played the sheriff. It had Ellen Bernstein and Allison Elliott and Kieran Mulrooney and Christopher Lloyd's brother, Sam Lloyd, who was big into theater, who has since passed away. And then Sam Lloyd Jr. was on Scrubs, and he has since passed away as well. But anyways, I got to talk with Gaylord a few times on set between things.
Awesome.
And he had nothing but, incredibly awesome things to say about your uncle. So, it was cool to meet him. But yeah, I know he was in a few of them. So I didn't know if you planned on, getting interviews.
We'd love to. I mean, me personally, because I'm a huge fan of his, I would love that. And Billy Bob Thornton, I'd love.
Oh yeah, that would be big.
Well, I'm sure.
We should get him. I'm curious. Like, maybe he would get involved like production wise.
Who's Billy Bob?
Billy Bob, yeah. Who knows?
Oh.
If they were good friends, he'd be like, "Hey, we're making a documentary." Maybe he'd be like, "I'm all about it."
Yeah,
that'd be cool.
Maybe it all depends on who he asks would determine what he would do or
Yeah.
not. So, Justin, maybe something you want to keep in mind.
Oh yeah, I don't know. It'd be cool.
Yeah.
Get some eyes.
But yeah, when I met Gaylord, he said something about being on Hee Haw, and I'm like, oh, I watch that show every weekend with my parents, and he goes, I had bills to pay. So I just thought that was funny that like he doesn't look back on Hee Haw as like his greatest achievement.
Not a fond memory. No, it
It's like, guys got to eat, he says. You know.
Wow.
That's surprising. I mean, it's kind of surprising. He was great on there. I mean,
No, that's where I first saw him.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of us grew up on Hee Haw and Lawrence Welk.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we had no choice. We had no choice.
I had no choice. There was 3 channels, and I had to watch my parents watch it.
Yeah,
that's funny that my grandparents watched those 2 shows all the time.
There was like one family would always go and visit on Sundays, and it's like, I'm like, oh crap, I have to watch Hee Haw again. And I'm like, because I grew up in the city, so like I was afraid of trees, so like I didn't know what was what. So I'm like, what is going on? I don't understand. These people are happy and they're Yeah.
I'd always watch it with my big jug, and then I'd have to sing gloom, despair, and agony on me.
I have no idea what you're talking about. You were saying like it was weird that he said that he had to pay bills. Like, I mean, we go to conventions all the time. There's a lot of people that like they only deal with this movie on the weekends, and then after that, they're like trying to do other things. Like, I'm doing this because I need to pay the bills.
Yep.
So I mean, it's unfortunate. There's people that have like affected my life that like they're like, oh, you like that piece of crap. I'm like, I do. Not only do I like it, I love it. So you're welcome. But
I have it tattooed on me.
Yeah,
I'm not kidding. I have lots of dumb stuff tattooed on me. Anyways, whatever.
But yeah, I mean, Jim definitely affected my life, and I wish I could have told him that, but. I would like to think that somehow he knows, and I think he's looking down at people like me who are keeping the Ernest alive, and, Billy Crank and all these other people out there who are doing their Ernest thing, and Maureen and, Melanie and all these people who just love Ernest and love Jim Varney. And, he has a great nephew who is, trying to keep him alive and, wrote a book and is doing this documentary. So I know we'd love to, 2 years out, but if this podcast is still going, then we'd love to have you back then to talk about it again, obviously. But, and if it's not going, we'll revamp it just to talk to you again.
Yeah, we can come on a horror podcast and talk about it. I don't know if it'll go well, but do that.
But yeah, I mean, we got 7 minutes. If there's anything else that you can think of that, memory or if anybody else has a question or whatever, let's not waste the 7 minutes.
Sure. Now, Justin, this was your first book that you wrote, the importance of being earnest. So, what encouraged you to be a writer? Had you always wanted to do something like that, and you were like, "This is the topic that I'm really passionate about, and this is what encouraged you to write the book"?
I think I've always wanted to do something creative. I'd like when I rent movies, or buy, good thing about buying DVDs, Blu-rays in the last 15, 20 years or so is you can see all these behind the scenes things and see how they're made and see all the work that went into it. And I just thought, gosh, that'd be awesome to be part of a crew that did. How rewarding must this be that all this went into this and you had a part and so I think I've always wanted to participate in something productive like that was of some value, of some substance that people could really enjoy. And I think too, and I've written in school and stuff, but I never really thought about writing a book. I don't think, I can't remember. But I think also the few books that I would read, I got into like the Malcolm Gladwell. I don't know if you've ever read much of his stuff, but he could write about stuff in such an interesting way. And I thought, if I really felt a sense of obligation, almost really knowing how much people really loved Ernest and my uncle. And I felt like gosh, I know all this stuff, and I know I could probably put together something that's would be pretty substantial. It's like, even if I didn't do a great job writing it, just the sheer amount of information that there's information there. How well I present it, whatever, but it's there. All these facts are there. And I tried to make, and that was probably one thing. I think I have a really good editor. I didn't want it to read just like a book of facts. You want it to read like it flows well, and it's all that. But I'm thinking, well, if nothing else, the facts will be there, and it'll be interesting for somebody to read. They can judge however my ability, and that's fine. But yeah, I just, and I thought too, I'm like, well, even though I'm his nephew, I'm like, I was like, who the hell am I to write like somebody's life story and present it like, here's such and such's life story? I mean, that's a big thing. And I think that's why it took so long for me to write it and everything, and feel like I did, where I felt like I put enough effort and work into it, where I felt it was deserving of me saying that, like, well, here's, his life, and that's, and he's a major star. And so, and of course I did have a full-time job and family, so I was kind of having to write it on the side of all that. But yeah, I'm glad that I was able to put together something of substance that fans like you all and everything, people can really have to sink their teeth into and know a lot more about him. And also was one person in particular, and I've talked a lot about him in the past, Joe Lyles, who was a friend of his, an early manager, who was with him in his early days when he first moved to Nashville, and then when he's out in California for like 5 years. And Joe knew stuff that hardly anybody else did, because it was a lot of these things were just him and Jim together. And Joe's really responsible in my book from about the 1969 to 70, like the whole decade of my book is mostly like Joe Lyles. And that was huge for me, because that was great for me because I was wanting to know all these things for myself. But these were things we had always heard about, bits and pieces, but he was able to put them all together, all of how did, A to B to C, how did he get, Johnny Cash, how did he meet Johnny Cash, and how was he on this, and all of that stuff. And so I felt that really was able to make my book the real kind of, total kind of, whatever you want to call it, authoritative, whatever, that I really felt it was, and that it aspired to be. There were still people that I was not able to contact. I wish I could have, but I mean, it was really the best I could do with my kind of limited resources of being none other than just Jim Varney's nephew. But again, like I said, I'm a movie guy, and so I'm really hyped up about the documentary and putting together something of a visual, nature. So yeah. Anyway,
I know we're excited about it, and I'm sure that the 9,000 Jim Varney fans on, Jim Varney fans Facebook page are excited about it. And once it hits, I'm sure the world will be excited about it. Like I say, there's a saying, I don't know how it goes, but it's like, you're only here a short time and you got to make your mark. And Jim did that and more.
Yeah.
So, he's one of those people that will live on because of what he did while he was here in his short time. So I appreciate, I know I guess we're wrapping up here, but I appreciate you being here. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to be here and sharing some stories and telling us about your book and your documentary. Appreciate Chris joining us and Kevin running the show. Again, we'd love to have you back again, when you get more information and more stories you want to tell and stuff.
Sure.
But definitely go enjoy the rest of your day and the 4th of July and stuff. And
just real quick, I just want to, is there anywhere that people can go to find information as it comes out about the documentary? Like, is there like a website or a particular Facebook page?
beingearnestfilm.com is where you can sign up for our newsletter and so forth. So, and find out, sign up for that, and we try to keep people posted through that.
Awesome. Cool.
And the best place to buy your book is Amazon?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Nice.
Awesome. And do you have a certain place that you want people following you or do you not want people following you?
Or people lose your number.
Yeah.
ATM machine. That's where you phone. Yeah.
I think the Facebook is gosh, I've almost forgotten it's pretty easy to find. It's like it's Bing. I think it's importance of being earnest. If you just type that in on Facebook, I forget the name of it now.
Yeah,
it's kind of been taken over by the documentary, so I don't.
We can throw it in the show notes below.
Yeah.
After the fact.
Okay, and I'm on Twitter too, so yeah.
Cool.
Perfect.
Well, we appreciate it, and if anyone's watching this, whenever you're watching it, also head over to the YouTube channel and subscribe there because it's going to be live on YouTube. Going forward, YouTube and Facebook. So
cool.
So it didn't quite get there today, but it will be there very soon. And then from then on, they'll appear on the All Our Yesterdays podcast YouTube channel. Justin, thank you very much.
Thank you, RW.
Yeah, Justin, thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your weekend and 4th of July.
Yes.
You too.